The wound that makes you love someone who can give you nothing. Carl Jung on emotional growth. Have you ever found yourself loving someone who, by all logical accounts, has nothing to give you? They walk into your life carrying an emptiness they don't even try to hide. They don't love you in the ways you need to be loved. They don't choose you, not really. They don't see you. Yet you stay. You find yourself drawn in, pulled tight, as if by an invisible thread that connects your heart to their void. No matter how loudly your mind screams, "This is wrong," some deeper part of you refuses to let go. That kind of love is not love. It is a wound doing the loving for you. A silent but powerful part of your unconscious has chosen this person, not because they are right for you, but because they feel familiar to an old pain you have never truly faced. This isn't emotional foolishness. It is a profound psychological mechanism, a pattern repeating itself with the devastating precision of a wound's logic. And if you don't recognize it, you will continue to believe you are in love, when in truth you are simply trying to heal the past through a present that cannot save you. Today we will walk through the 5 stages of this unconscious pattern, guided by the wisdom of Carl Jung. We will explore the wound that makes you choose them, the mechanism that keeps you trapped, the illusion you mistake for love, and finally, the awakening that sets you free. Stay with me until the end, because the moment you understand why you are holding on is the moment you finally find the strength to let go and reclaim yourself. 1. The unconscious root, the wound of not enough. There is a kind of pain that never screams, yet it echoes through every relationship you have ever had. It is the quiet, persistent feeling of being not enough, not good enough, not beautiful enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough to be chosen, to be kept, to be loved fully and without reservation. This feeling does not appear out of nowhere. It is not born from any single person in your present life. It is the result of fragmented memories from a childhood where love felt conditional, where you learned that affection was not a natural state of being, but a reward for being the good child, the smart child, the pleasing child. Slowly and unconsciously, you came to believe a devastating lie. To be loved, you must first be deserving. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." When parents are emotionally wounded themselves, unable to express love in a healthy and unconditional way, the child inadvertently carries their emotional deficits, their expectations, and their unresolved pains. A child raised in an environment lacking consistent emotional connection easily develops an ego structured around shame and inadequacy. And when that child becomes an adult, they enter the world of relationships with a desperate hunger to love and be loved, but they begin from a flawed starting point. Their foundational question is not, "Who can I share my life with?" but rather, "What must I do to be chosen?" From this place, love ceases to be a meeting of 2 free souls. It becomes a stage where you are perpetually auditioning for the role of the worthy one. You don't love like a person. You love like a job applicant, constantly trying to impress, to prove, to please, waiting for the verdict of acceptance. This leads to a painful and deeply confusing paradox. You are magnetically drawn to people who cannot or will not give you anything. Why? Because their emotional distance, their inconsistency, their very unavailability reactivates your deepest, oldest wound, the feeling of not being enough. They become the unconscious symbol of everything you once lacked. Loving them and trying to win their love becomes your psyche's desperate attempt to rewrite the ending of an old, painful story. If they so cold, so distant, so difficult, finally choose you, then maybe, just maybe, you will finally feel that you are enough. You will finally be validated. Jung wrote, "What you resist persists." The feeling of not being enough is a form of inner shadow, and if this shadow is not brought into the light of consciousness, it will continue to dictate every bond you form. You can change partners, cities, jobs, and behaviors, but the outcome will repeat itself with haunting familiarity. You will fall for those who cannot see you, not because you are fundamentally unworthy, but because you are still subconsciously trying to fix something from your past with the tools of your present. Picture a young woman who grows up in a family where love is conditional. Every compliment is tied to an achievement, and every hug comes after a high grade. When she makes mistakes, silence, not warmth, is her parents' response. She learns that she is only lovable when she is performing, when she is good enough. As an adult, she finds herself constantly drawn to emotionally distant and critical partners. Men she must try twice as hard to impress, to hold on to. She believes that if she can finally make one of them love her, it will retroactively prove that she is, and always has been, good and worthy. But this is the trap. Because she loves from a wound, she is not loving freely. She is loving like someone in debt, always trying to pay off an invisible emotional bill. In a powerful excerpt, Jung writes, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort." Recognizing the feeling of not enough is neither easy nor comfortable. It requires you to face the parts of yourself you have been avoiding, the insecure, hurt, and empty parts you don't want to admit exist. But only when you confront that shadow can you stop being controlled by it. Another critical point is this. When you love from a place of lack, you don't just hurt yourself, you also risk hurting the other person. You place upon them the impossible expectation of filling you, fixing you, and making you feel whole. But that is not their role. No one can complete in you what you have not been willing to face in yourself. And when they inevitably fail to meet this unconscious need, you feel disappointed and rejected, as if your entire worth has been denied once again. The old wound reopens, bleeds, and the cycle repeats. True love does not grow out of emptiness. It grows from inner wholeness. But to reach that point, you must begin by acknowledging, there is a part of me that once didn't feel enough, and I have spent my life trying to prove it wrong. When you can accept that truth with gentleness and without judgment, the healing begins. You no longer have to wait for someone else to tell you that you are good enough. You can finally begin to say it to yourself. Carl Jung called this journey individuation. It is not about becoming a perfect version that others expect, but about becoming wholly and completely yourself, a unified being of both light and shadow, love and wound. 2. The repetition mechanism, recreating the wound in relationships. You thought you had learned your lesson. You swore to yourself that after the last heartbreak, you would no longer be drawn to that type of person, the cold, the distant, the one who gives you nothing but ambiguity and anxiety. But then they appear. They have that quiet gaze, that slow voice, that way of keeping just enough distance to feel magnetic, and everything familiar awakens inside you instantly. Once again, you are pulled in. Not because they are extraordinary, not because you are foolish, but because your unconscious recognizes something profound. It whispers, "I know this energy. I have been here before." In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this is not a random or unfortunate coincidence. It is the psyche's most powerful and often most painful mechanism at work. Jung understood that the unconscious always seeks expression. And if it is not made conscious, it will project itself into our relationships and our life events. When a wound within you remains unseen and unhealed, it will find a way to recreate itself through the people you meet. What has not been resolved does not simply disappear. It returns, often in the form of a person, a situation, or a feeling so familiar that it convinces you it must be fate. So again, you fall for someone who has nothing to offer, not because they are a whole person you admire, but because they perfectly resemble the shape of an old void. They are a symbol, a symbolic reenactment, as Jung described. You don't fall in love to connect with them in the present. You fall in love to complete an old story that never had a proper ending. A story that may have started when you were very young, standing outside a closed door, waiting for a word of recognition, a hug, or a glance that said, "You matter." But it never came, and you carried on with an emptiness, not sharp enough to be a constant pain, but always present, like a low hum beneath the surface of your life. Jung taught that the unconscious is a self-regulating system, and repetition is one of its primary tools for seeking balance. In other words, you repeat to complete. You love someone who cannot love you back, so that, if this time they finally choose you, it will retroactively redeem all the times you were not chosen before. The real question is not, why do I love them so much? The real question is, how am I trying to fix my past through them? You didn't choose this person because you lack standards. You chose them because your emotional blueprint was shaped by a particular kind of pain, and your unconscious, in its relentless drive toward wholeness, is trying to finish what was left undone. Jung might call this a delayed individuation process. When the ego has not yet integrated the shadow, the feelings of unworthiness and abandonment, it will seek an external object, another person, to replay the unresolved inner drama. The result is that you are not loving the person standing in front of you. You are loving the part of yourself that has not yet healed, projected onto them. If you see yourself in this, pause for a moment and ask with radical honesty, what truly keeps me from leaving? Often it is not love, it is hope. A desperate, painful hope that if they change, if they finally turn around and love you, it will serve as the ultimate proof that you are and always have been good enough. This is the common illusion of those carrying these deep childhood wounds. They are not looking for love. They are looking for evidence of their worth. And tragically, no amount of external evidence is ever enough. Even if the person temporarily changes or gives you a crumb of affection, you will still live in a state of perpetual fear. Will they go back to who they were? Is this love even real? Because the foundation of the connection was never built in the present. It was built on a fracture in the past that was never mended. Jung wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Every person you love, every relationship you live through, is another mask your unconscious wears to say, 'Look at me. Heal me.' But instead of listening, you keep fighting, keep proving, keep clinging to those who cannot give you what you need, because you believe that if they turn around and choose you, then you will finally be free. But the truth is, no one can free you from a story you refuse to leave." I once heard a woman say, "I know he doesn't love me, but I can't stop loving him." I asked her, "Do you love him, or do you love the possibility that if he loved you, you would finally feel enough?" She broke down in tears. That was the truth. And as Jung famously said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. There is no awakening that does not come with a degree of suffering. Realizing you have spent a lifetime waiting to be chosen is the first, most courageous step toward individuation. It is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of soul-level courage. Jung believed this pattern could only be broken when it is brought into the light of consciousness. That means you must dare to name the real feelings, the lack, the inadequacy, the deep craving to be loved unconditionally. You must stop and ask, who was the first person who made me feel I had to earn love? The answer does not lie in your current partner. It lies in older, quieter memories, in the places where you were not truly seen. And only when you return to those places with compassion can you rewrite the script. Not by making someone else love you, but by finally loving the part of you that was once abandoned. 3. The confusion between love and trauma. Before the old cycle is even closed, another more pressing question rises. How do I know if what I'm feeling is love or just a reenactment of my trauma? This question is crucial because there are relationships that bring you to tears every night, that tear your heart between hope and despair, and still, you believe it is love. You call waiting loyalty. You call heartbreak depth. You call your unconditional sacrifice something noble. In truth, you have confused the terms. You are loving from a place of wounding, not from a place of wholeness. Carl Jung observed, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." The purpose of a true meeting in love is transformation, mutual growth, and the experience of becoming more whole in companionship. But if a relationship makes you shrink, doubt yourself, lose sleep, and feel perpetually drained, that is not the chemistry of love. It is the echo of an unhealed wound reacting violently to a familiar toxic energy. What is hurting you is not solely the other person. It is the part of your inner pain that has been unconsciously triggered by them. If you are reading this and feeling uncomfortable, confused, or as though I am describing your story, do not dismiss that feeling. Let me ask you this directly. The love you claim to feel, does it hold you in a state of anxiety, insecurity, and constant self-proving? If it does, then perhaps you are not in love at all. Perhaps you are caught in a trauma bond, an attachment born from a shared or mirrored wound, and you are trying to fill a void you have never fully acknowledged. Jung believed that our intimate relationships are a living stage where the unconscious performs the unfinished parts of our soul. He wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. What you have not made conscious within you will show up outside as if it were your destiny. That is why chaotic, tension-filled, and painful relationships are not just emotional failures. They are vivid manifestations of inner wounds that have been left unaddressed." I once worked with a young woman who was in love with a successful, charismatic man, but he was also erratic and emotionally unavailable. Sometimes he was incredibly affectionate, and then he would vanish for days without a word. And she waited. She waited for hours, for days, for months. Every time he returned with a small gesture of affection, her hope would reignite. She told herself, "Maybe he truly loves me. He's just busy, he's hurt, he's learning how to love." But in truth, she was not in love with him. She was trying to heal the deep, silent pain of being neglected by her father as a child. She was reenacting a script she knew intimately, being left behind, then waiting to be chosen. If you see yourself in that story, please know you are not alone. Many of us have confused love with intensity. We believe that for love to be real, it must include a degree of suffering, waiting, sacrificing, and relentless effort. This is because our bodies and our emotions have become accustomed to loving under conditions of emotional starvation. But real love does not demand your pain. It does not make you doubt your own sanity. It does not turn you into the weakest, most anxious version of who you are. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. The deeper purpose of your existence is not to suffer endlessly in the name of a mislabeled love, but to awaken light within the darkness of your own unconscious. And that light cannot and will not grow in relationships that only bring you anguish, control, disrespect, and insecurity." Look back for a moment. How many times have you stayed in a relationship simply because you believed that love means endurance? How many times have you sacrificed your own emotions, your time, your dignity, to save someone who was not ready to be saved? How many times have you mistaken their emotional distance for emotional depth? How many times have you turned clear signs of neglect into stories like "they just need more time"? That is not compassion. It is a form of self-deception, an attempt to avoid facing the raw feeling of abandonment, a feeling you have carried long before this relationship even began. Jung warned us clearly, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We are willing to do the most irrational things just to avoid facing ourselves. And one of the most common absurdities is calling pain love to avoid admitting that we are loving the wrong way, the wrong person, and for all the wrong reasons. So what does real love look like? It is the kind that brings a deep, abiding peace, not the kind that leaves you anxiously awaiting each message. It is the kind that makes you believe in yourself more, not feel like you must constantly try harder just to be kept. It does not require you to sacrifice your self-respect. It gives you space to grow, to breathe, and to be fully unapologetically yourself. For awakening, when pain becomes a mirror, there is a truth that is incredibly hard to accept, but it marks the beginning of every true healing journey. No one can save you from a pain you are not yet ready to embrace yourself. No lover, no relationship, no amount of external validation can fill the emptiness that was created when you first abandoned your own presence in your own life. And this emptiness is not just the absence of what you did not receive from others. It is the void left by the parts of yourself you unconsciously gave away to be accepted, to be loved, to be enough in someone else's eyes. Carl Jung did not use gentle words when speaking of this turning point. He chose a truth that is both sharp and profoundly compassionate. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. You will not find the truth of who you are in someone else's gaze. Clarity does not come from finally being chosen, held, or loved by another. It only comes when you dare to look into your own heart, the very place where all the truths you have been avoiding are waiting for you. Awakening, as Jung defined it, does not arrive when you find someone better. a healthy relationship, or when your ex-partner returns with a late apology. Awakening happens in the solitary moment when you stop looking outward for a solution and finally, bravely, turn inward. It happens when you sit alone in the silence, with no messages to wait for, no affirming glances to catch, no one arriving to fill the familiar void, and you are forced to face yourself. That is when you realize a staggering truth. All this time, you have not been searching for love. You have been searching for yourself through the wrong people. I once heard a true story of a woman who spent nearly 6 years of her youth with a man who never truly chose her. He was always ambiguous, sometimes close, sometimes cold, sometimes speaking words of love, other times vanishing without a trace. The reasons he gave were always the same. I'm not ready, I'm healing, I've been deeply hurt in the past. She stayed, not because she was not smart enough to see the truth, but because she carried a deeply rooted belief that love means patience, sacrifice, and waiting. She believed that if she was good enough, if she loved him long enough and deep enough, he would eventually recognize her value and choose her. But the day he married someone else, she finally understood. She had not lost him. She had lost herself in the long, exhausting journey of waiting to be chosen. In that moment of complete collapse, what rose was not hatred, but a question that struck her heart like lightning. Why did I let myself go this far just to be loved? And from that question, she began a completely different journey, the one Jung called individuation. It is a path no longer centered on anyone else, but one that turns inward to rebuild the self. Jung wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Individuation is not the process of becoming better so that you can finally be loved. It is the process of returning to yourself as an imperfect whole being, carrying shadows and wounds, but also light and truth." Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror, not the kind that reflects your physical image, but an inner mirror. In that mirror, what appears is not your face, but all the pains you have denied. Each time you clung to someone who did not love you, you covered the mirror. Each time you said, "I'm fine," and while your heart was breaking, you blurred the glass. But eventually life leaves you with no one left to tell your old stories to, no circumstance left to hide in, and you are forced to look. And what you see may hurt, but it is also the only thing that will ever set you free. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. You cannot awaken without pain. You cannot become conscious without touching the parts inside you that have long been buried." Awakening is not a soft, gentle emotion. It arrives like a contraction, when everything you once believed in shatters, when you no longer know who you are without that person's love, when you are forced to ask, if no one is left to love me, do I still have anything? And then something strange and miraculous happens. In the emptiness, you begin to hear the voice of the true self, not the voice of the ego, the part that fears being left behind, but the small, gentle, unshakable voice of the self, the deepest core that Jung spoke of as the center of our totality. The self is not just your center, it is the whole circle, containing both what you know and what you have denied. It is your inherent wholeness. Nothing is missing, and nothing is excluded. When you finally connect with this self, you stop living as a wounded ego, constantly chasing love for validation. You begin to feel your own worth as something inherent, unchangeable, and whole. And that changes everything. You no longer choose people because they make you feel enough. You no longer mistake drama for depth. You no longer love to heal, to fix, or to complete someone. You love because you are already whole, and you wish to share that wholeness with another person who has realized they were whole all along. From this place, love is no longer a battleground of sacrifice and endurance. It becomes a sacred space where two whole beings can grow together, without shrinking themselves to fit, and without expecting someone else to fill a void inside them. If you are at that breaking point now, the moment you have just let someone go, just lost an illusion, just do not know who you are anymore, then please know that you are standing at the threshold of freedom. Not the kind of freedom that rushes to find something new, but the deepest kind. The freedom to be yourself without needing anyone else to prove that you are worthy of it.